Hello there. I just want to make a little video about, not really sure what it's about, but it involves an experience of dealing with the police. And I brought a matter to the police. I have done over the last 20 months, something like that, of long-term harassment and threats being made and a long-term harassment problem. But dealing with the police, and I think the threats and the harassment I'm dealing with a psychopath in that regard, and that it can destroy your mind actually when you're dealing with a psychopath that you can't get away from, or they're so close by. But I want to say that dealing with the police has been as bad, and it almost like echoes that experience of dealing with a psychopath. There's something so wrong. Something so wrong with them, the ones I've dealt with, and the organisational aspect of it, and the way they appear to be gaslighting and lying, and then suddenly appearing to do something and then not doing anything, and then they keep talking about investigating things and then wanting to meet you, and then they won't, then they drop that, and then they're so deceptive. I've never met with more and interacted with more illogical, gaslighting, deceptive people in my life than the police. I mean, the person who contacted me today from the police seemed reasonable. I've never met them before, but they seemed reasonable. But it's just, I don't understand what their processes seem mad. The way they organise things seems insane and calculated to drive you mad, actually. There's something, and I want to relate this back to, I've just had a tiny, well, it's affected me greatly, but compared to Lucy Letby, but you can see how being interrogated by people like that over huge lengths of time, as Lucy Letby was, they'd make you ill. And knowing that you're having to go back and see them again, these people, I'm not saying every officer is like this or every situation's like this, but that's been my experience. And you can see what they've done to Lucy Letby. There's something, I don't know, are they picking certain people that are just, and I've been dealing with these inspectors now, and they're just weird, utterly weird. And I dealt with one on the phone, and they're just gabbling and they're not listening at all. There's nothing being received by them. And then they say, this will be done, and then nothing happens. And then they just blank you then. And they keep talking about things are being investigated, and it's just all, it's utter gaslighting fools. I don't know what they are. I do know that it's psychologically dangerous to deal with the police, even though, so you say, well, why do you contact them then? Well, because I need access to the law. If someone's committing this offence against me, they're the gatekeepers. Unfortunately, I don't want to deal with them. I don't think but it gets worse because,
the Trump administration.
Oh God, I just clicked the video on. It gets worse because I'm relating this to a lot of the videos I've done about Cheshire Police and what they've done to Lucy Letby and what they'll continue to do. Until they're stopped, they'll continue to say, oh, we're investigating 4,000 other potential murders or babies that have been affected, that Lucy Letby, they'll continue doing it. Nothing would stop them. They're insane. There's something insane about, I'm not talking about every officer everywhere, I'm not. I don't want to tar everybody with the same brush, or I don't want to do that. I'm not saying that. But something like Operation Hummingbird and the construction of it and the way that all the money and then they give each other awards for it. The chief constable gives that idiot an award. What are these? I don't know what what the hell these people are, where they've come from, how they've been trained. There's something deeply, deeply, deeply malignant and wrong and twisted, and it's not just stupidity, it's something willed. It's something willed. And whether that detective sergeant has come out and released those early notes which demonstrate that the police knew that Evans was a nutter, and yet they still used him and carried on using him and just dropped the things they couldn't use from him, but just kept the bits they could use. In that cynical way. This is a malignant force, the way they operate. And in my case, I found out, after all the efforts I've taken to get the police to do their job, to uphold the law, they're turned on me and then contact my doctor without my permission, seeking and then saying that there's something wrong with me, that they need help from my doctor to deal with me because I'm complaining about them. That rings a bell, doesn't it? You start complaining about someone and then they turn on you, you know. You complain about them because they're not doing their job, because they're not upholding the law, because they're not acting rationally or professionally, and they're not, and they haven't. And yet they keep telling me about investigating. It's all shit. Everything that comes from them is just nonsense. And I remember reading something that someone said who was an ex-policeman who'd worked, I think they happened to have worked in Scotland, but they said they were a policeman and then they left. And they said one thing the public will not understand is the level of contempt so many of the individual police have for the public, the absolute contempt they have for them. And he's talking about the way they discuss things when they're in their offices, the contempt they have for them. Never mind what you see on documentaries, which are all for show, you know. That was him saying that as somebody that was in the police. There's something culturally devastatingly wrong and inferior about how they're run now, and I believe that the problem is right at the top. Of course there are some good officers. I don't know how many, but there obviously are. There's an attitude problem, and there's just a complete lack of professionalism problem and a lack of response problem. And then they're just itching to, well, we see it, you know, they want to go for soft targets and but they don't do anything about real threats to people until it's too late. We know this. I've watched so many things where they systematically fail. I mean, in particular with cases of harassment and stalking in relation to female victims, where they won't join anything up. They won't engage with the law. They don't join things up in terms of incidents. They feel incapable of doing it. They're organised in such a way that it ensures that nothing is joined up for them, and that's why you get so many female victims of stalking, whether it's from strangers or ex-partners. They end up being attacked and killed because there's no action there. There's no joining up action, and you hear them. I've watched so many things, and listened to so many podcasts about it, where they say at the end, "Well, we lessons have got to be learned about this. We need to look at our processes," and nothing's ever learned. They don't want to learn anything. And that comes back to that contempt that ex-officer says. I'm sure not every officer feels that contempt for the public, but the way they've treated me shows absolute contempt. I've made these reports because something real is happening and there's a real threat to me. And then they want to reframe it, and this is what psychopaths, narcissists do. They want to reframe it as my mental health problem. Because, as my friend found out, you know, they've got powers. I think it's section 135, 136. They wanted information from the doctor about my health. They just contacted my doctor. And then my doctor contacts me, and then I said, I don't tell them anything. I don't want you to tell, because she had to ask me whether she could write to them. And I said, no. And I said, she said, I said, it's ridiculous what they're doing. It's just sickening. I put it into context. I said, I'm in a complaints process with them. And then she says in the end, the doctor, are you saying it's like a vexatious thing from him? Vexatious. And I thought, is that the right word, vexatious? And I looked up the definition of it. And it said like calculated to annoy. And my friend has agreed with this. And it's like they're trying to goad you. They goad you. Especially if you complain about them, then they goad you into something. There's something so... And if they ever saw this video, they'll just say, this is more of my paranoia, because I think they're against me. It's not so much that they've chosen me to be against me, because I have nothing to do with them other than the last few years. But in other instances, I've just found them to be utterly useless, and that they don't want to do anything. They don't want to act. They either act against innocent people or they don't want to act at all. They're up for arresting people praying silently in the streets, or going round the houses for a tweet, and then going and trying arresting someone. There was that guy on Facebook where you saw police came round with a mental health, and I think that's the way they're trying to position me. Eventually, they'll come round to my home with somebody from a mental health team, because they have powers. I think it's section 135, 136, related to the Mental Health Act. My friend looked that up, and it's the fact that they can take you to what they call a place of safety, which can be a police station, if they believe, because I've complained about them, and they won't answer the complaint. And then the police play this game, like they say, oh, you're running out of time now with regard to the original offence that you've complained about. It's running out of its time. But it isn't. It isn't anyway, because the last thing happened just on Christmas Day. And because I've said that I believe there are potential very, very serious threats against me because of what I've heard being spoken. And there's been many... I've sent them 17 videos of evidence of threats. But there's been so much more on top of that, and it's possible that the individual I'm talking about has got connections with has connections with people who are very seriously dangerous people. There's no doubt in my mind about that. And then I've heard them talking, I think, offering to do the job, as it were. And I think then the police are trying to reframe that as my paranoia. Although I acknowledge, it might not have been. It's hard to explain. It's like dealing with the police is like an echo of what I'm dealing with this psychopath that's very close by. It's an echo of the experience. And then your doctor rings you and says the police have contacted us about you because that they want help. The police contact the doctor wanting help from the doctor to advise them how to deal with me because I made a complaint because they're not doing what their job is. And you can see the way it's going. You can see the direction of it. And then they keep telling me they're investigating things and they got to do another. It'll take 3 weeks to look at everything I've sent them, as though they're having to reinvent the law that they're meant to be upholding, as though they've got to reinvent something. It's something that's so obvious and so easily, and has been so clearly evidenced. You can make a decision or not about it. And the original decision they did not to act on it was so irrational and absurd. And I keep saying, that's what led to the complaint. I'm saying, give me a rational reason why you won't uphold the law and act. And they won't do that. They just say, they gave these utterly irrational reasons that got no aspect of the law or no aspect of common sense applies to them. So they're trying to fob you off. And then before that last year, they ended up sending me a letter as though I've been warned about antisocial behaviour. Everything is inverted. So to go back to Lucy Letby, this is what I've been dealing with. It's a sense of how how insane the police are en masse. I'm not saying every individual officer who I've never met, and there could be some really good ones who are doing good work and they're dealing with difficult people. I understand that. But in my experience, I'm dealing with people who don't want to do any work. They don't want to do the job at all. And more than that, they spend loads of. They've been in my home like a couple of times for an hour at a time talking to me and then asking me about my anxiety, but not doing anything about the issue, and then just ignoring it until I have to complain about them because they haven't responded in 4 months. So when you look at those brief bits of those, I can't speak to every other officer in the country, but I'm talking about this group of people, and it obviously goes up to inspector level. The one inspector I did speak to on the phone, because they've suddenly started. It's all at this PCSO level, and now they're involving inspectors and constables and sergeants, but nothing's happening. But they keep telling me they're doing these reports. It's the gaslighting. They're utterly weird. And the way that you see those bits of those interviews with Lucy Letby, and it's probably a mistake me putting this video up. I don't care anymore because I'm not anti. I want the good police. I want the police. I want to, and I would understand that they have very difficult situations that they have to deal with. I want to be. I don't want to respect someone because they're in the police. Like, I've got to respect the police. I respect someone per se anyway. On a one-to-one basis, I'll respect them until they start acting in ways that make that respect diminish until it's not there at all, and there's nothing to respect. And when they're lying to you, when they're gaslighting you, and when they're trying to reframe you as like you're mentally ill because you've complained about their inaction, why would you respect that? What is there to respect about them? And now I'm wondering, I think I've got to make another complaint because they're trying to categorize me as mad or something. Well, they literally said it in the email, that not mad, but they said, it's my building paranoia. With all the evidence I've supplied them, they've just turned it all into paranoia. And they just don't want to do anything. It's very weird, and it's not an isolated situation, because in the past I've had other situations but related to where someone else was a victim, that I had to make a report about something, and they didn't know the law even, and they told us the most ridiculous thing, which kind of would have meant that we wouldn't have pursued it, and you had to beg them. It's like that you have to beg them to act where there is an issue. But where there isn't an issue and where there shouldn't be an issue, they're all over it like a cheap suit. I don't know if that's the right expression. They're all over it when there's not something that they should be dealing with. Then they're all over stuff, isn't it? When they want to do non-crime hate incidents, they're all over. You're there, then they're there, quick as you like. There's no stopping them then. When there's someone standing in the street praying silently in their head, they're there like that. When someone writes a certain tweet, which is just where they want to check someone's thinking, as that was it, Harry the Owl, I can't remember his name, and he was in the police himself, and he's done this campaign about these non-crime hate incidents being recorded at the College of Policing. But they're still doing it. They're still recording them. But there's an actual offence being committed with me, and it's related to actual legislation, which is the Protection from Harassment Act. And when long-term harassment and threats of violence and being threatened, it changes your whole mindset and your whole life. And every time I come and leave my home, I've got my camera working. And I've been advised to do that by the police as well. When I rang them, they said, that's what you've got to do. I spoke to a guy and they told me to do that. And at the same time, they're telling you that you're paranoid. So it is that crazy making weirdness. And you can only imagine if you looked at the full interviews that they did with Lucy Letby, they would have been driving her mad through those interviews. And you can imagine all the way they would have been the way they would have been reflecting back to her and using all her innocent, open answers against her. All her innocent openness against her in the same way that that creature, that sadistic creature, Nicholas Johnson, did in the court. And he goes away thinking, I've done a good job there. Oh, I did it. I did a cracking job there for the prosecution. I ripped her to pieces. I asked her, I told her, I had that great ace up my sleeve when I said, do you remember being born? Are you saying it didn't happen because you didn't remember it? I came up with a really good zinger there, didn't I? And everybody said, wow, oh my God, Nicholas Johnson, he's superb. What a prosecutor. He said, he asked her whether she could remember being born, and she said she couldn't. And then he said, you're saying that just because you can't remember something, it's not that it didn't happen, did it? Because you obviously were born. What a genius I am. These people are sick. And the police that interviewed her are sick. The ones that look at her notes and looked at LD, and then they read it as LO, and they said, oh, that's the code for the murder when you do your murders, is it? When you do your murders, Lucy, that's the code you're using. It's just when she's on a long shift. Oh, Lucy, when you send whether it was a text or WhatsApp, I'm coming back with a bang from Ibiza. That means you're going to kill more. That's what there is deep, profound stupidity in them. Those that whole. But look who's running it. Look who's running it. Listen and look at Detective Superintendent Constable twat face Paul Hughes. Listen to him. If there was a missing gerbil, you wouldn't want him investigating a missing gerbil, would you? Or somebody looked at you in the wrong, you wouldn't want him investigating a custard pie, would you? You wouldn't, nothing. Look at and listen to him. And he's running it. That Operation Hummingbird will go down, that video, as other people have said, it will go down as one of the most, it's not embarrassing, it's sinister that they thought that puts them in a good light after what they've done, the horrific thing they've done. And it's not just stupid, it's not bumbling, it's with will. Because I've always known it, I've been doing videos about this since August 2023, they were constructing it along with those doctors and Evans, willfully doing it, willfully horse trading in terms of being the intermediaries between Evans and those doctors, so everyone's on the same page, fabricating it, building it up into a case that could work for them. And the lies they tell. So Hughes, the biggest lie he tells, they said, we didn't consider it could have been someone else, it could have been something else. He's lying to your face when he's saying that. He doesn't care that we know he's lying. They never considered anything else or anyone else because they were on a fabrication job because they could see it as a big juicy thing. And then they spend years at it. This is back to my situation, the amount of time they spend investigating. And it's shit. Because, it's just what they do. What is it? How are these people trained? I applied to join the police a few years ago, and I went through all the Metropolitan Police. I applied to join them. And I've been through their application process. And I got right up to the very final bit, which I think I would have gone through it, and I think I would have been in the Metropolitan Police these last few years had I gone for that final interview. I'm pretty sure. I went through all the stages because there's a lot of stages before the final one, And I think I would have. So I want law and order. I desperately want that in our country. I desperately want that, and I would want to respect anybody. It's not, as I say, it's not about respecting people because they're in a certain job. I'd respect people until there's a reason not to respect them. I respect them, give it automatic respect to anyone. I was just thinking of something Carl wrote, according to Carl wrote on one of his videos. I think it might have been in a comment about it is. I've been looking on Twitter. I've gone back as an incognito, and all these creatures are still out there saying the same things that they were nearly 2 years ago. Oh, but she admitted it. But she admitted it, Lucy. What, I don't know what these people are. I don't know. Are they? I think I said this on the live. Is there something organised? Are some of these police? Are some of these trolls working for Cheshire Police? Wouldn't surprise me. There's a hard core of them saying, it's all going to blow up in our faces now. Look at social media. We've got to keep an eye on it. We need to discredit people talking about this, and we're going to act as trolls. Are the trolls that contacted people I had as friends on my Facebook account saying I'm an offender in different ways? That's what they started doing. Sending messages to friends of mine on Facebook, these trolls, warning them that I won't go into the details because this could be clipped, and saying I'm a serious offender. And I've got a completely, I don't have to say this, but I've got a completely, utterly, clean record in every way. Totally, in 60 years. So, but that's what they would do. So I'm wondering whether some of these trolls are working for the police. It wouldn't be the first time something like that's happened. Or this, what has been happening over these recent years with what they call the 77th Brigade, whatever they are, when they're at home. All this intervention through social media to, I won't go into that. It's a whole other ball of wax, as they say, a whole other subject. I wouldn't be surprised if they try to start trying to discredit Mark MacDonald or David Davis, trying to get something on anyone who's trying to help Lucy Letby. They would do it if they could. The dishonesty of it. I looked at the time and afterwards. I looked at John Charles de Menezes. That was murder. They murdered him, and no one ever paid for that. And they lied. Their first recourse is to lie. The first thing I think about when I think about the police per se, and again, I'm not saying every individual officer is doing this everywhere all the time. I'm not saying that, but as a generality, the first thing I think of with regard to the police is dishonesty, and I've seen it firsthand. They're dishonest. They're dishonest. With John Charles de Menezes, the first thing they said about him was that he leapt the barriers. That's what they ran with. That very high, I don't know, it might have even been the head of the Met at the time. Oh, he jumped the barriers, and that's why they chased after him. No, it was the police that were jumping the barriers. And the guy was just walk through and put his ticket through and then sat on the train, and then they put 9 bullets in his head. Put 9 bullets in his head. And the gold commander for that was none other than Cressida Dick, who got rewarded with a top job a couple of years later, who said in some interview that she would have done the same thing again. Under the circumstance, she would have done the same thing again. Murdered an innocent person. There's so much more to what happened there, that murder. There's so much more to that murder that happened there, because he's an electrician, working on the underground, working on tracks. I'm not going to go into the whole thing. Working on the tracks. And those explosions came from underneath those carriages. I won't say any more, and he's had access to all those tracks and has seen or heard something that he shouldn't. He's got to go. They have all those with their story, with the police's story, they had all those opportunities to stop him before he gets to the tube. They let him get onto the tube, then they jump over en masse when he's in the carriage. And in an orchestrated way, they burst in there and they put 9 bullets in his head. That poor man. No one's paid for that. They paid him some money, but they've not paid. They've not paid under the law of the land in terms of murder. Cressida Dick wasn't paid. She was rewarded. Got the top job. Then we look into the case of Mr. Morgan, the private detective from Wales who was hit with an axe in his head in London many years ago, and his brother's been fighting that. If you can look that up, and I read the book about it, and I followed everything I could about it at one point, and the corruption goes right to the top. It's because it was the link between organised crime and the police. The corruption at a very high level, at commander level and higher, but right up to the chief constable level, who shut it down, because they know how high it went and how high it probably still goes. That they're in bed with organised police, it's organised crime. They're the flip side of it. And the mentality I've been dealing with certain people in the police is that, and I've thought this very clearly, is that they're closer in spirit to the psychopath that's been harassing and threatening me and saying other people are going to deal with me. People that I think are very dangerous and know to be dangerous because of I've seen some of the crimes that they've done, and I've researched it because I've found out who they are. These aren't ordinary people. It's not a dispute. There's no kind of dispute here. And because some action has recently been taken by this housing association, it could increase the risk exponentially. So I've got to go out. I mean, victim support got involved. They sent me these alarms for the window, an alarm to carry around, etc. But it's quite possible that the threat has increased significantly now. I've just got to try to deal with it as best as I can. If something happened, hopefully nothing will happen. That the individual thinks they've got something to lose now because finally the housing association have taken some action, but they've only taken action because I went through a housing ombudsman's process, which was an incredibly detailed and difficult process to go through. But they actually, surprisingly, found in my favour, but something actually worked in this country for a change. And they put pressure and they forced the housing association to act appropriately. But most people don't get to that level. Most people don't get to the level of going through the ombudsman because it would be rebuffed. I just happened to find someone in that ombudsman's office that has got the intelligence and the will, but I had all the receipts. I had to send them like a couple of hundred emails, and then the housing association get fined effectively for maladministration. And now finally they're doing the right thing, but they've been forced to do it. The trouble with the police's and the police's complaints process is that is unremittingly corrupt, as we know. And they rebuff and they deny, I think, something like 99% of all complaints against them. So they're not a complaint process at all. They're there to protect. They're a protecting agent for the police, that complaints process. They're there to protect either their bad behaviour or their negligent behaviour, either when they do things that are actually unlawful and criminal, even, the police, or when they fail to do what they're supposed to do, which is another form of corruption, is negligence in public office or malfeasance. That organisation is there to protect the police. I'll just say again, I made an application to join the police. So it's not, I want, obviously, any person with any sense and who likes order in society and doesn't want people, anybody to be victimized or predated upon or attacked or harmed in any way whatsoever, and for there to be justice and law. Of course, everybody wants that and wants to support the men and women that go into that job. Of course, you would want to support that, and I do. But if dealing with them is like dealing with gaslighting, narcissistic, kind of weird, absolute weird responses, illogical, irrational responses, complete what seems to be utter laziness and complacency and unwillingness. And when you talk to them, it's just not like it's not like talking to professional people. The guy today wasn't too bad. And an original PCSO wasn't too bad. He acted appropriately. So you can see I'm wanting to be fair. But others in the intervening, and this person who's written to my doctor saying that there's something wrong with me, that the police need support from the medical services to deal with me. It's like they can't deal with me, so they've got to reframe me as mad. Because I'm taking them to task, they got to say I'm kind of not well, I'm not well. It's me, it's my problem. It's not that they've fucked up and they've completely failed to act appropriately and they won't uphold the law. I'm doing this video because if I saw a video like this, somebody talking about this, it would give me a bit of comfort in the sense that I'm not the only one, and I know I'm not the only one anyway. And people are in situations way, obviously, unspeakably worse with regard to situations with the police. There was the case, and I just can't bring the names to mind at the moment, of that poor young man that I don't know if I should go into that. I've just watched so many cases where people have been so badly let down, and the original investigation is just so completely lacking. You've got to either think it can't be that level of incompetence, or lack of will or lack of reason to look into a set of circumstances. It has to be deliberate. It has to be a policy. It has to be a policy in certain instances not to investigate something. It can't be that they think, they can't work it out, that there's nothing there. They can, and they do, and they have. They just don't want to. They don't want to do it. They don't want to do their jobs very often. They just don't want to do it. And they want to find the shortest route. Their default route is to doing nothing if they can do that. The quickest they can get to doing nothing is what they'll do. Unless it's a really kind of soft target. And I know that's a blanket description. I know there are many instances where they are intervening, and they put them, individual officers, they're putting their health and their physical lives on the line in certain instances. I know there's that side of it as well, but I'm only speaking from my experience. And then you see a case like with Lucy Letby, is they're all over that for years and years, and racking up all the overtime in the world, and there's not even any crimes. There's not even any crimes. And they've spent years, and I think they even built a separate house for the investigation, where they could be based for the Operation Hummingbird. And there aren't even any crimes. And they spent years, 3 years, over those 3 arrests. And they're still at it. And they're still saying we're still investigating it. And they're going to keep saying that, because the lack of morality here is that every officer involved in Operation Hummingbird could secretly, privately acknowledge to you that they know, if they didn't know before, and then I think that there are no crimes. They don't want that to blow up in their face. They're happy for an innocent person to be in prison for the rest of their life, to avoid their embarrassment, which should be more than their embarrassment. Everyone in that operation, the Chief Constable of Cheshire, they've got to go. No pension. They've got to go, all of them. Some of them should be in prison for their malfeasance, But you'd have to prove it. You'd have to prove the level of corruption. It'll all be explained away. Oh, like, well, we did our best and we thought it, and it's Evans that told us. No, but they're implicated. I've always known they're implicated. Intuitively, I've known they are in the corrupt nature of how Lucy Letby was framed. A tiny little bit, a percentage, a tiny bit of it is in that detective sergeant's notes. When the police, it's self-evident and obvious that they're dealing with someone in Evans that they should not be relying upon. But it doesn't work that way for them. They're more than happy to still rely upon him as the backbone of their case. Because there's no morality in those officers. Because if there was any morality in them, they'd say to Evans, hold on a minute, you're saying here that she harmed babies, but we've found out she's not on duty. So either there are multiple attackers, murderers here, and we've got to investigate that, or you're completely unreliable and we've got to get rid of you and we can't rely on you for any of these other ones that we can make fit. Do you see what I mean? Because they made the other ones fit because Lucy Letby's on duty. But all the ones that, and it's coming out in these detective sergeant's notes. And if that is one of the ones with conscience, if she's deliberately given that information out because she's got an attack of conscience, then good on her for doing that. Obviously, but is that a whistleblowing thing, or have they found those notes by some other means? They're more than that. It's the lack of truth. It's the lack of morality there. The lack of care. They didn't care whether he was a nutter. They didn't care whether. Why wouldn't it click for the police that Evans is telling them about times where there's deliberate harm? So it's so scattergun, but they can just conveniently drop all that. Like they can conveniently drop the 25, possibly 50 other things he's raised with them. That's what I've done about half a dozen videos about that, or mentioned it 20 times. How can they have any faith in that person? He was there. He's the spine of their investigation in terms of pulling it together, in terms of bringing it to something they can bring to the CPS that ends up with a charge. Without him, but they're putting all their faith in him, and they can see he's a nutter. And then he brings up 50 more incidents to them, and they blithely, easily just let it all drop. They cast it aside as though it doesn't matter. But nothing clicks in their mind. Hold on a minute, this person's completely unreliable. They can't be working from a moral centre. They can't be working from a centre in which there's any care as to whether there are any crimes there or not. It was their first duty to really be sure that there are crimes there. If they've got somebody involved with them, yes, they need medical advice but it shouldn't have, like Professor Modi said, Nima Modi said at the press conference yesterday, it shouldn't have been gone through. It should have gone through with a panel of actual experts there looking into that. But the police shouldn't have been involved. You're in disaster world once those police get involved, because then they get this Evans attached to them. But there's got to be more to that. I don't believe the official story. If you knew, if you could prove and you knew the level of corruption involved in setting up Lucy Letby at all the levels, at all the stages, everything they had to, everything exculpatory they pushed to the side, everything that obviously showed Evans was utterly reliable, that they conveniently, the police now push to the side, it would astound you. That collective amount of that level of corruption would astound you, or maybe it wouldn't astound you. For some people, it doesn't astound me anymore. It doesn't astound me. I expect it, because I think there's something rotten about, as institutions, as an institution, again, not talking about every officer, who sometimes officers doing some very, very difficult jobs, and there will be obviously innocent or honest officers, but not in Hummingbird. They're part of a very, very dark one of my videos from a long time ago was titled The Dark Heart of Operation Hummingbird. That was from well over a year ago. And that's what it is. It's more than just a dark heart. It is dark itself. Because they're not operating out of a sense of justice, a will to support justice. They're not acting out of morality. It's out of will and ego, complacency, total lack of skill, total lack of critical thinking, and manifest constant dishonesty from the police. And it's all over that Operation Hummingbird video, like a disease. The disease of dishonesty that is throughout all the institutions, and the police is obviously one of them. And and I can't even call it the government. And I'll stop it there. So you can see I've gone from the particular, the beginning of this video, into the larger issue and back to Lucy Letby's situation, because it's monstrous. But these are exemplars of what's rotten in this country, and it runs through all the institutions. And it runs through so many other things, and the events of the last, well, starting in 2020, and that crime there, which is of an unfathomable scale, and which is a worldwide crime, which I'm not going to dip into this video. I think you know what I'm referring to, but it's a crime of epic. It's so big you cannot see it. Most people can't see it, won't see it, are in denial about it. Because if people really saw it, knew it for what it was, as other people have said en route, there would be blood in the streets, in the sense there would be absolute an explosion of. I won't carry on with that. Anyway, take care. Have a great day. I've got to find some lightness. It is very, to all the people that have been, as there's lots of us actually, aren't there, that have been so affected by following this monstrosity, this evil thing that's happened to Lucy Letby and her family, and the parents, how they've been lied to, and how they've had. I watched a video today when they're saying that they've been gaslighted. That's exactly it. That's part of it as well. They've been all gaslighted and lied to. Well, we know that, and they've been treated abominably. That they need. I'm running out of words. We know all the people that have taken this to heart so much. It's about this, but it's about other things, and that's why when people talk about it, very often they've got things in their personal lives either going on or have gone on in the past where they've been really badly treated or wrongly accused, or they've seen it happen to someone dear to them, a loved one or a friend or something like that. There's often behind all this is the will that we've got to improve things. Can't keep coming up with these same characters coming to a podium saying, yes, we acknowledge our mistakes and we're going to learn from this. And they're not going to learn anything. When that finally happens, when the Chief Constable of Cheshire Police comes to that thing and you see it on the news and he goes, we realise we've really made some terrible mistakes here and we want to apologise unreservedly to Lucy Letby and the parents of Lucy Letby's family, and we're going to review all our processes and learn from our mistakes. From the bottom of your heart, they won't be learning anything, and they would do it all over again. Those people, because all the wrong people are running things. The worst people are running things. A fish rots from the head, as they say. It is rotten at the top. All those creatures of the establishment have to go, so that the good officers and the people that do want to uphold the law and not stitch people up like they've done to Lucy Letby, and the ones that do want to uphold the law are in the preponderance and are led by good people, by efficient people, not by political creatures, not by liars, not by pathological liars. And I don't think you get up in it. I don't think you get any. I suspect you can't get up in that greasy pole, that ladder of promotion in the police, unless you're a pathological liar and a creature of the establishment, unless you would lie like you're breathing. And they would find it so easy to do that. And they've all got to go, as obviously the current so-called government's got to go. But anyway, one thing at a time, innit? Anyway, I thought I'd leave this light and fluffy video with you, if you've got this far. And bit of a cri de coeur, but it's also, like I tend to do, I come back into the situation, the awful injustice that's been done against Lucy Letby. I always come back to that, and then it broadens out from there, doesn't it? It broadens out system-wide. It's systemic, and it's worldwide, obviously, as well. But we've can't deal with the whole thing all the time in one go. It's just things have got to change, things. What's that great song? A change is going to come. I'm going to listen to that in a minute. Change is going to come, and it has to. Plus ça change. No, well, that French phrase. Oh, that's it. You see, the French. You get the brilliant. I love the French. Plus ça change, plus ça même chose. I was going to say, it's about welcoming change, but the phrase means the more things change, the more things they stay the same. Plus ça change, plus ça même chose. The more things, but we've got to not allow that. We've got to not allow that, and things have got to change. And I do have hope, and we've got to have hope that we can make that happen. And the exoneration of Lucy Letby, and it is coming. We know it's coming. Is part of that change. Is part of that change. Thank you all. All the best. Take care. Bye-bye.